This podcast is about introducing our fans to the animals, plants, and other products that we work with at Josh's Frogs. It's an opportunity to paint a picture of our hobby that is refreshing. We want you guys to be successful with the animals that you're keeping, and we want our hobby to grow ethically and sustainably into the future. Welcome to the Josh's Frogs podcast. I've got Jayzun with me again. We're going to be talking about tarantulas, and we're going to be talking about sheds today. But before we do that, I just want to let you know that the Josh's Frogs podcast is brought to you by joshsfrogs.com. We're your one-stop shop for all your reptile, amphibian, and pet bug needs. We carry everything. So not only captive-bred animals, but we do all of the stuff that you need to take care of those animals. So we do caging and substrates and live plants and lighting and all that kind of stuff. But we also do all the feeders that you need to take care of those animals as well, too. So check us out, joshsfrogs.com. We've got plenty of how-to articles, care sheets, that kind of stuff, and then a bunch of videos on how to take care of these awesome animals. So check those out. We want you to be successful with what you're keeping. So check us out at joshsfrogs.com. But without further ado, welcome Jayzun to the Josh's Frogs podcast again. If no one's seen any of your other episodes, give us a little breakdown. When did you start at Josh's Frogs? How long you've been here? And what exactly do you do here at Josh's Frogs?
Well, I have to share with you because I've been having so much fun doing it. You hired me back in 2019, just before the pandemic, so I was with you guys through all of that.
Yep.
And in that time, the arachnid division was in its absolute infancy. Mm-hmm. And then through that, we've had over 3,000 spiderlings at one time. We've got 300 breeders. We've had some great employees helping out with this project, and it's been 5 years of fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're going to talk about shedding. Can you kind of break down like what is shedding, what a tarantula is doing when they're shedding, and give us an idea of what that process looks like?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about it because it's so interesting because they do it so differently than we do. Because we do it too. We shed. We just do it constantly in tiny bits. That's why you got to take a shower, wash off all this dead skin. They do it all in one piece. Now, because they have an exoskeleton, what they do is they grow a new exocuticle as the outmost part of the exoskeleton because their skin has several layers just like ours does. Exocuticle, endocuticle, and all that material in between. So what they do is they start building this new exocuticle underneath the old. During that time, the spider sometimes has some outward tells. For our boreal spiders, it actually interferes with their ability to climb.
Wow.
Because now they've got this extra layer of skin between them and what they're grabbing.
Interesting.
So when your arboreal spider all of a sudden seems to not be climbing so well, probably getting close to a molt. Now, the New World spiders, the ones that come from North, Central, and South America, they've got that secondary defense called the urticating hairs. Now, these are very shallowly rooted hairs, usually on the abdomen. And a spider is getting ready to molt as they're building that new exocuticle underneath. It'll actually disturb the roots and cause them to fall out.
Wow.
So a lot of times you start to see a balding patch on the back. Now, tarantulas, most tarantulas, abdomens are actually normally as pink as my skin. And you see that bald spot and you see kind of flesh colored underneath. But then as they're getting closer and closer, the skin underneath is opaque and it'll make that bald patch go jet black. And once you see that jet black, it's usually 24 to 48 hours within the molt.
Wow. Now, how often do tarantulas shed? And is it tied completely to growing, or are they shedding it even when they're full grown?
Actually, the first thing I love to do is dispel a very common myth, is that arthropods shed to grow. That's not true. It actually does make it easy. Right after a shed, their new exoskeleton is very elastic, and you can see some amazing size jumps immediately in the 48 hours to a week after a molt. But luckily, I've had enough tarantulas, and I've watched them grow. In fact, my very first tarantula was a Brazilian giant white knee, and I noticed that actually, while she did get a little bit of a bump after a molt, I watched her grow more in between molts.
Interesting.
And they're like, well, doesn't it have to molt to grow? Because the idea of the exoskeleton, that's like bone, right?
Yeah.
Well, how many times have you molted your femur? I mean, it's significantly bigger now than when your mom gave birth to you. I mean, good Lord, that poor woman. How many times have you molted that? No, actually, bones and exoskeletons can and do grow.
Oh, wow.
They do it for the same reason we do, to refresh our first barrier and line of defense to the entire world around us.
Wow.
And they'll do it much more quickly when they're younger, just like a baby has baby soft skin, because they're shedding their skin at a much higher rate. There are also happen to be a time in their life where they're growing faster, but is there a causal relationship? I'm not sure there is. So let's take that out. But then let's talk about where they are in their lifespan. A baby tarantula can molt twice in the same month.
Oh, wow.
An adult rose hair tarantula, on average, sheds between 2 to 3 times a decade.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
And this is a spider that sees decades. Rose hair tarantulas can sail into their 3rd decade.
Wow.
It's amazing. So now, what is molting? What is it like? The best way I like to explain it is, imagine you're wearing a suit of armor like a knight. And the only way you can get out of that is you can pop the back panel off, turn your bones to jelly, squish your way out like an octopus, stand up, harden your bones up, and then walk off, leaving the suit of armor standing where you were.
That's amazing.
And that's a perfect way. We've got this great video from one of my coworkers, Amelia, that caught her rose hair tarantula in the midst of molting, and she did time-elapse and sped it up, because it can take, for an adult rose hair, like 6 hours to finish molting.
Oh, really? It takes that long? Wow.
And as you'll see on this video, what they do is they roll over on their back. Tarantula will almost always molt on their back. And if you see a tarantula molting on its belly, there's a sign that there may be a problem.
Oh, wow.
Because they're not really built for it. Because what they do is they roll over on their back, and they pop that back panel off. And that's this piece right here. That's attached to their abdomen. And then they're left in there, and they're on their back. And as you see in the video, they push the shed up off of them.
Interesting.
And because they've got those joints and they've got the long, hard pieces, their new exoskeleton has to be completely elastic to make it through that.
Yeah.
And in fact, if they are dehydrated or things go wrong and they don't make it out of their molt, that's usually fatal.
So go back to like how often they're shedding and care for them. Like, is there, when I notice my tarantula is about to shed, is there anything I should do differently? Like, do I increase humidity? Do I stop feeding? Like, as a person taking care of the tarantula, what do I do when I think like, oh man, they're about to shed? Do I do anything different?
You absolutely do. And most tarantula knows this, and those who don't, I would love to share. It's a very dangerous time in their life. So to begin with, imagine you were about to go through that popping out of the suit of armor, and you knew you were going to do it in like 3 weeks. You might consider losing a couple pounds.
Yeah.
Make it a little easier to shimmy on out of there. So it's actually really common for tarantulas to decrease or completely go off their feet altogether.
Oh, interesting.
You should always monitor your tarantula's feet so you don't have prey items wandering around the cage, because they can actually get to where they're starving and they'll try to feed on the tarantula while it's sleeping.
Yeah.
And if it's getting ready to molt, then it could be helpless.
Yeah.
So it's very important not to have uneaten prey running around the cage when it goes to molt.
Gotcha.
Then after it molts, like I said, to get out, it has to make this exoskeleton soft. So even their fangs are like gummy fangs.
Oh, really?
So they're completely defenseless.
Wow.
Then the process is called sclerotization. There's your new vocabulary word for today. And sclerotization is the process of exoskeletons oxygenating and causing them to go from a much lighter color to a darker color, and from rubbery to rigid.
Interesting.
So sclerotization is the word. And for an adult tarantula, we like to give them a week before we feed them.
Oh, gotcha.
Babies, we still give them a week just to be safe. But they're so small, they got the cube square law in their favor, and they pop back much faster.
That makes sense. Cool. All right, let's take a look at some of these that you have on the table. Let's start messing with some of those.
Okay, so when your tarantula molts, a lot of tarantula owners are just like me, and that is almost like your kid's artwork. You can't just throw that away. It's cool. You might want that later.
Yeah.
So a lot of tarantula owners have what we call itch boxes. They'll have a container that they just throw their molts in. Now, when they first discard their molt, then it usually looks like this. You see this crumpled mess.
You can tell that it like shot itself out of it. Like it looks like a squid or an octopus like thing, like that. You know, like how they release themselves. So yeah, I can see how they can escape that way, and they pushed it out. Like that's what it totally looks like.
And a lot of us, we just throw that in our little itch box and forget about it. But a lot of us, we love to do what's called spreading the molt. That can do two things. One, you're left with this awesome. Okay, the legs are still sticky, so you got to be careful, and they're super fragile. They want to catch the table, so I may not be picking one up. There we go. It's like a perfect hollow copy of your spider.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. And I actually had a customer when I was working at Prue's Pets that I sold a Burgundy Goliath bird eater as a tiny little spiderling. And he kept the molts and put them in a shadow box.
Oh, that's so cool.
It shows it go from dink, 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 dink.
Yeah.
Those grow fast.
That's so cool.
So the second thing is if you spread out the abdomen right, the inside of the abdomen will actually show the genitals and let you know whether you got a boy or a girl, which can be very hard to know for certain from the outside. From the inside, it's absolutely certain.
And like right away or after it's a certain age? Like how soon can you do that from the shed?
It depends on how good your magnification is.
Okay.
I had an employee who just had an absolute talent for attaching a magnifying lens to his iPhone.
Oh, wow.
And he was getting the picture of the spermatheca on like 3/4 inch, 1 inch spiders.
Wow. That's amazing.
That was impressive. He was talented. But most of us wait till it's a little bit bigger and a little easier to see.
Yeah.
But I've got a couple spread out where later we'll come back at it and we'll look at the pieces, and then if you see the spermatheca, that's where the female stores the sperm. Then you know that's a female, and if it doesn't have that at all, no epiginum, then you know that it's a boy.
Gotcha. All right, now these squid-looking, octopus-looking, because they shed themselves out, how do you get it from that to looking like something like these, where it actually looks like the tarantula that you're keeping?
Well, that's what I'm here for. I'd like to share with you and our audience members at home how to spread a molt. Now, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind. One, New World tarantulas that where their ancestors came from North, Central, and South America, have a secondary defense called urticating hairs, and those are on the exoskeleton. This spider right here, on the abdomen, it still has urticating hairs. If I touch it, it'd be like horrifying cross between poison ivy and fiberglass insulation.
Yuck.
Imagine microscopic little glass rods that are covered in tiny hooks, and those microscopic hooks are covered in even tinier microscopic hooks. And everything it touches, it catches, it breaks, it touches, catches, breaks, and it can be really itchy.
Huh.
Well, you can get that while you're spreading the molt. Now, it's important to know, if you want to protect yourself from that, some things will protect you and some things won't. This is your typical nitrile examination glove. This will protect you from all sorts of biohazards, but not urticating hairs. You might as well be wearing fishnet stockings. It will go right through it. So this is a good example of chemical-resistant gloves. These are like your 1950s dishwashing style gloves.
Yep.
These will protect you.
Oh, cool.
Now, I actually went lateral on that, so we don't have to worry about it today. These are from Indian ornamental tarantulas, and these are new old world spiders, and they do not have the urticating hairs at all. So what we're going to start out with is this tarantula is actually waterproof from the outside. If I soaked it in water, nothing would happen. It would just float. However, on the inside, it can absorb water. So what we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves a little bit of room here. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. There's your syringe. I'm using a water dropper. And what we want to do is we want to load up
All right.
and we want to be very delicate because this is super brittle. This has the consistency of paper that's gotten wet, then spread out and let it dry completely, and now it's brittle. So lay it belly down and kind of get your thing to the center. And you want to get some water droplets right there in the center.
Just right in the middle?
That's what you're aiming for.
Okay.
And if you just aim for the center and just keep dropping it, you'll notice that the molt will start to relax. Now, something that you want to be careful as it's relaxing is oftentimes if you look at this spider, these legs are actually intertwined. This and this are the 3 and 4. That and that are the 1 and 2. So I have to...
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right. Like, as soon as you start adding water to this,
then it starts to open up like a flower. Now, you got to be careful. Those little leg hooks catch on everything. Keeps them in the trees. There we go. Now, as you get it where you have it, I want you to see those little holes that go to the arms and legs? I want you to shoot the water up.
Okay.
Up into the legs. So hopefully we got our picture-in-picture here where our awesome videographer is going to show us that on the underside of these legs are these little fluid-filled sacs. This tarantula moves 2 different ways. One, it uses muscles and ligaments to pull the leg into the body. That's their strength. They can use their muscles to pull towards them. However, they use fluid pressure hydraulics to push their legs out. And that's what those little fluid-filled sacs are for. Now, that's actually what we're wetting from the inside by shooting the water up into them.
So you told me how we were going to do this before we started doing the video, and I was a little bit skeptical of like how easily this would work. But like, it's amazing how you shoot water in it and it just stretches right out.
That's actually going to get harder and harder to keep up. It's going to become a wet noodle. So yeah, put it down on a flat surface. Now, the hardest part to spread out is actually the abdomen. This is the abdomen, and it's got the consistency of either that brittle paper or wet toilet paper. So as soon as you get it wet, you have to be so careful to spread it. And if you do that, then you can see inside to the vulva externa and the spermatheca for a female.
This is really cool. This is like art with tarantulas. I love it.
It is.
It's like the Bob Ross version of...
Happy little accident. Well, here there are some interesting things with the species that we have picked to work with. We're not working with the same species. This is both members of the genus Poecilotheria, the ornamental tree spiders. Interesting enough, these group of species can be identified by the pattern of banding on the legs and the pattern on the carapace. That's Poecilotheria regalis. This is Poecilotheria striatus. Very similar species.
Now, I've seen sometimes where you'll do these, where you'll have the fangs up. Like, are you placing something underneath that to when you're putting the water in to get the fangs to stand up like that? Or are you not doing anything like that?
Actually, you can't do that with the shed. Where you do see where the fangs are out, those are actually preserved specimens.
Oh, really?
And those are the actual fangs, and they're actually able to use the strength of the fangs along with what's there, whereas these aren't actually fangs. They look just like fangs.
They're just the shell.
Picture I'm going to be showing you underneath where it shows but it's just the shell of the fangs.
Huh. Interesting. Interesting.
I've had tarantulas use their fangs to bend the metal grating on screen covers, but if you put any pressure towards these. However, that doesn't mean you can't do anything with them. Amelia, one of our co-workers, she actually went through and took a bunch of sheds I'd saved, and cut off the chelicerae and mounted them, and she turned them into earrings.
Interesting.
Fangs earrings. They're really cool.
Now, you might not know the answer to this. How did somebody figure out that this is how you did it? Like, this seems like, how would you know that, like, oh yeah, I just got to spray water in it? Like, how is it that they knew? Like, is it just the hydraulics? And you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense because it's using hydraulics. It needs some fluid in those.
There's two different types of people. There's a whole lot of overlap who keep spiders. Most of them are arachnoculturists.
Yep.
There are people who are interested in keeping awesome
Yep.
spiders.
Yep.
They don't need to know the scientific information. They need to know it's awesome.
Yep.
But then you got arachnologists, and then you got those of us who are both. It was an arachnologist who looked and said, you know what? That tissue is waterproof from the outside, but not from the inside. I wonder if I got some water up in there, if that would loosen up.
Yeah.
And then it just got passed around like lore. There's things like if you're dealing with a really small and fragile one, particularly if you really want to preserve the adjuvant and spread it, using a soap water solution draws the water into the exoskeleton much more effectively.
Interesting. Now, long term, like keeping these, so we've added the water into it. I've manipulated it to how I want it. Like, how long do these sheds last? And is there anything I need to do to make them last a little bit longer? If I want to keep, like, maybe a shed from my tarantula over the course of its lifetime, like how do I keep these and protect them and preserve them?
If you put it inside of something, any
Really?
kind of clear container. A lot of people mount them in shadow boxes and put them on the wall. Mm-hmm. But that's the key. If you leave a molt out, it's going to get dust and stuff on it. It's going to get moved around. They're super fragile. They will get battered up. Cute story. When I first got hired, I got into a little bit of trouble. It turned out I didn't work on that actual April 1st, but I did work on that March 31st. And I had a whole bunch of sheds that I'd spread and a sense of humor. And I was the last person leaving that day.
Yeah.
So I went around the building like a demented Easter bunny. And I hid the molts all over the place, but just so you could see the front part of it coming out from around things. My favorite one was a bathroom on the second floor. When you're sitting on the john and you look at the wall, you can look up to where the wall meets the ceiling. There's a vent. Well, I stapled one to the wall that was coming down. Unfortunately, the cleaning lady found it. And everybody loves the cleaning lady, so my popularity was way down. I would ask, please kindly not do that again. The funniest part, though, is, and that's where I was talking about how long they can last, is my employee at the time, a little baddie, I put a medically significant one coming out from around her computer, and she didn't even check if it was real. She just liked the idea that with it there, nobody messed with it. So she left it there.
That's right.
About a year and a half later, it was banged up enough that it got thrown away.
Oh, that's awesome.
Whereas, like most of these, who knows how old they are, as long as you protect them, they can last. Actually, this is the very first sexed tarantula that we ever sold. So that was like 3.5 years old. That's
amazing.
Bigger than this now.
Yeah, that's amazing that you can keep those. So cool. Thanks for educating us on those. I'd like to do some lightning round questions with you to wrap things up. Are you down for a lightning round?
I love lightning round. All
righty. So if money and space were no issue, what's your next pet that you would have in your house?
Gosh, there's so many that I love. I had said parenti before, but really that's too small a monitor to keep up with. I love a black throat.
Cool.
Dumb and hungry and full of love for anyone that feels that hungry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Your favorite plant or animal in the whole world?
Gosh, animals too hard. But lately, I just fell in love with a plant that we actually sell. If you guys have ever heard of a fierce begonia, it's like someone asked Mother Nature, like, I like begonias, okay? Is there any way you can kind of punk rock it up a little bit? Mother Nature said, hold my liberty spikes. Looking at it on the site, we've got 2 down in the reptile, in the arachnid division now in the tanks. And yeah, they're begonias with spikes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You wouldn't believe me. I wanted to be a soulless stock trader on Wall Street with a Lamborghini.
I can imagine you that way, Jason. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad you didn't go down that path. All right, you got an hour of free time. Kids, no kid, no wife. You're just alone. What are you doing with that hour of free time?
Well, before you take away the family part, that's always going to be the first. But actually, I hate to be lame, but my division's at a really exciting time, and I've got so many things going on. I would probably spend it with some spiders and the camera.
Oh, cool. Cool. All right. You got a bunch of people listening to you. What's one piece of advice or one piece of encouragement? Can be about keeping animals, can be about just life in general. What's one piece of advice or one thing that you'd like to remind us of today?
I always like to tell people to be kind, and whenever you can, be generous.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. If you check out Josh's Frogs, anything tarantula, anything pet bug, that's all Jayson's area. So he's written a bunch of stuff, done a bunch of videos. Check out his stuff. I love the passion that he has for these animals and how he's spreading it across our country. So thank you for doing that, Jayson. Thank you for joining us for the Josh's Frog podcast. Have a good day. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoy this content and want to stay up to date, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us across social media. We always want to bring you the best content, so let us know what you think in the comments. And for all your reptile and amphibian needs, be sure to check us out at joshsfrogs.com. We have an amazing selection. Until next time, stay curious, stay froggy, and keep exploring.